Hello brothers and sisters, welcome to the continuation of the confession from our brother, who was once an assistant pastor to an apostle in the ministry in Ghana. Today, he shares with us his experiences working with the man he knew and thought was doing the work of our Lord Jesus Christ. If you are new here, this is Dangerous African Confessions HD, where we bring to you confession stories to help you make your own informed decisions about your walk with God and to help you live a purposeful life. Without taking much of your time, let us go and listen to what our dear brother has to talk to us about. Please subscribe if you haven't done so. Also do like and share this video, and hit the notification bell, so you will be notified anytime we upload new videos.
Like I said, I had been working long hours in preparation for the crusade. I would run errands, coordinate with the staff, oversee the setting up of the tents, and help with the other assistants in getting everything ready. But it was those late-night sessions with Apostle Elijah that made my skin crawl. I should have known then, but I had tried to convince myself that it was just the pressure of the event. The heavy atmosphere in those late hours, the way things seemed off, all felt like the weight of responsibility. But that night, something inside me, an instinct, a warning, told me that I had to see for myself. I had just finished organizing some files in the office when I heard the sound of low voices coming from down the hall. At first, I dismissed it as the noise of the volunteers getting ready for the crusade, but the voices had an edge to them, unnatural, almost eerie. I walked quietly down the corridor, my heart pounding with each step. The office door was cracked open, and I could see dim candlelight spilling out into the hall. My curiosity got the best of me, and against my better judgment, I pushed the door. I wanted to see what was happening and make sure everything was in order. What I saw stopped me dead in my tracks. Apostle was sitting at his large, oak desk, and his back towards me. He looked different from his usual demeanor when he turned to me after I pushed the door. He was surrounded by the same group of people. They were all dressed in dark, formal clothing, black suits, dark ties. They were silent, almost motionless, as if they were waiting for something when I pushed the door. So, I excused them and asked to leave. I couldn't understand the things that was happening. It didn't look like people having a normal meeting. It looked deeper and far more than what I thought was happening. So, after about an hour or so, Apostle called me into his main office. This time, it was only him. He asked of why I came there without being invited or called for. And then I told him of my reasons, which had to do with the fact that, when I was walking through the corridor and I heard those noises, I needed to check if everything was alright. And that is why I came in like that. And I begged him to forgive, for it wouldn't happen again. He asked what I saw, and I told him I certainly didn't see anything aside the men and women in the room. He then told me to get back to my work and never try that again. If anything, I should knock first before entering any office or room. Like I said earlier, it had left with about a week to the program when it happened. So, I decided to stay off that area of the offices in the church. I didn't want any problem. 2 days after that incident, I had a dream, my brother. And you won't believe what I saw in my dream. And in the dream, I was walking through the same corridor that I had decided never to go. And I came to the office the apostle and the other people in black were sitting. In the dream, I entered the room, but they seemed not to mind even if I was there. To be honest, I didn't see any of their faces, but my senior apostle was the only one I saw his face. My brother, let me say that, even in the dream, I felt the air grow colder as I stood there, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The only sound in the room was the faint crackling of the candles and the low murmur of Apostle Elijah's voice. He was speaking in a language I didn't understand. It wasn't English, and it certainly wasn't any prayer I had ever heard in church. The words seemed to carry enough power in them, dark and heavy, like they weren't meant for church. I wanted to step back, to leave the room, but something held me in place. I couldn't take my eyes away from what was going on in the room. The truth is that I was meant to see all the hidden mysteries in the church. But I didn't know what I was being shown in my dream. You see, my brother, on the table before Apostle was a large, red cloth. It was spread out in front of him, and on it were symbols I had never seen before. They were drawn in thick, black ink, swirling patterns that seemed to pulse with an energy of their own. At the center of the cloth was a small carved figure. Its eyes black as coal. It didn't belong in any church, let alone one that claimed to be spreading the gospel. This was no holy artifact. The people around the table were silent, their eyes fixed on Apostle, who was now standing, his hands raised as if in a trance. The chants grew louder, faster. His voice had changed. It was no longer the confident, powerful voice I had known. Now, it was strange, low and guttural, as if someone else was speaking through him. In my dream, I could feel a chill run down my spine, a sense of dread filling the room. I wanted to run, but my feet felt frozen to the floor. It was like the room itself had become a prison, trapping me in that moment. Then, Apostle Elijah turned, and our eyes locked. The look in his eyes was something I can't fully describe, but I can never forget it. It was a coldness that cut through me, a knowing stare that seemed to strip me bare, like he could see everything I was thinking. It was as if he was telling me, you shouldn't be here. But now that you are, you can't unsee what you've witnessed. My brother, he didn't say anything. He didn't need to. His gaze alone told me everything. This wasn't the man I had followed, this wasn't the pastor I had admired. This was someone else, a man who had given himself over to something much darker than I could have ever imagined. The ritual continued. I stood there in shock, unable to look away. The group around him continued to chant, their voices blending with Apostle's in a haunting symphony. I saw Pastor Elijah grab a small dagger from the table. His eyes were closed now, as if in deep concentration. He muttered a few more words in the strange language, then placed the dagger to the idol's chest. And then, the room went cold. So cold that I could see my breath. That was when I woke up from my dream. I was disturbed and shocked at the same time. I didn't know what had just happened, what I had just saw in my dream. But somehow, I knew in my gut that it wasn't right. There was no explanation for what I had seen, no way to justify it. I dreamt of something far beyond anything I had been taught in church. This was not the work of God. This was not the ministry I had once believed in. Throughout that night, I couldn't sleep again. All I could have images in my mind and eyes is what I had dreamt about. I started trying to connect the dots of what I saw in the office days before to the dream, but it all didn't make sense to me. I couldn't process what has been revealed to me in my dream. Could it be that Apostle Elijah wasn't who he appeared to be? His power, his influence, his success, it wasn't from God. It came from something else. Something dark. I knew it was for a reason that I had that dream after I had chanced upon them in the office. You see, as someone who wants to be in the ministry, there are some other pastors that I admire too, and follow their teachings. The very next day, I went to one of the pastor's place and had a very deep conversation with him about things that were bothering me. When he saw me, he told me that he wanted to send for me because he has a message for me. I wanted to hear his message first, but he told me to talk about why I came to him first. When I started to ask questions as far as my dream was concerned, he had this smile on his face and shook his head. He told me to never forsake my God for any man or any blind loyalty. Because to him, he sees God too close to me. And it is just because of how I admire my pastor, that is why anytime God tries to tell me something, I do not hear him speak to me. Reason is that, he then told me that, he had a vision about me and my senior pastor. And he saw me holding a carved image of wood. An apostle too was holding a dagger and there were incantations being done. And in his vision, he saw that the carved image represented someone from our members. And it was his death that was elevating the apostle. He then told me that God revealed to him that, after every crusade that the apostle will have, something bad happens to someone who will come for the crusade. And it is that the apostle uses as sacrifice to his dark entities. He told me that I will never have peace if I continue to be with the apostle, because God has a mission for me, and I can't mingle with people who had their source from other dark powers aside him God. Our conversation lasted for longer than I thought it would. At the end of the day, he made me aware that God wanted me to see things for myself if I was meticulous when I went to the office. This, he said, is because God has been telling me things through dreams and I have not heeded to them. And as such, he wanted me to see it for myself in order to be able to walk away from where I have imprisoned myself. After this insight into the dream, I was left confused even more. How was I going to tell this man that I was leaving? This is because I just knew, that I was in too deep to back out now. What started to piece everything together for me in a more certain term was that, the next morning when I came to the premises and I greeted the apostle the same way I have been doing, he ignored my greetings and walked away. Even to a point where one of the young pastors that was close to me asked what I had done. And I told him I have not done anything. And he said, I should find out, because the way me and my pastor are, there is no way I will greet and he will walk away like that. Just in that moment, I came all making sense to me that I had seen too much. The secrecy, the rituals, the coldness, it all made sense now. This wasn't a ministry. This was a means to power, to control, to manipulate. And I had been a part of it. I knew then that I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't keep turning a blind eye to the truth. Apostle kept on keeping his distance. Things that I used to do for him, he was calling others to now come and do them. My brother, he finally called me to his office that evening and asked me something I was never expecting. He asked if I was willing to serve under him or wanted to go out and listen to people about him. I told him I didn't understand and I didn't know what he was talking about. And he told me to go and think about it. If I really wanted to be with him, I should come and tell him. And if I so wished to leave, I should also come and tell him. My brother, I was shocked to hear such things from him. You see, my brother, the days after that night were filled with dread. I felt like a man walking in a fog, unable to shake off the images of everything from my dream, from the pastor I had talked to, and apostle's sudden coldness towards me. I tried to go through the motions, doing my usual duties as an assistant pastor. I had to help coordinate the crusade, ensuring everything was in place for the thousands of people who would flood into the church grounds. But every task felt like it was happening in a dream, a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I spent most of my time alone in the church offices, unable to focus on anything other than what I had seen. The truth had settled inside me like a weight I couldn't carry, sinking deeper into my bones with each passing hour. I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't ignore it. Apostle Elijah wasn't the man I thought he was, and the ministry I was serving wasn't founded on the principles of Christ, but on something much darker. But even more than that, I struggled with what to do. I had seen the truth, and now, there was no going back. I couldn't simply ignore the horror I had witnessed. But at the same time, I was terrified. Terrified of what would happen to me if I told him I wanted to leave or decided to speak out. Apostle had power that stretched far beyond the church. He had influence in the city, in the media. He had a network that would crush anyone who tried to expose him. I had seen what happened to those who crossed him, how they were discredited, their lives ruined, their reputations destroyed. I had no allies. No one to turn to. I was alone with the knowledge of what I had seen. It was like I was carrying a curse. And I couldn't bear it. My brother, I spent countless sleepless nights lying in bed, my mind racing. The walls of the church, the very place I had dedicated my life to, felt like they were closing in on me. I would hear the laughter of the volunteers preparing for the crusade, the excitement in the air, and it made my stomach turn. The people coming to the event had no idea. They were walking straight into a trap, into a ritual that would sacrifice one of them, all in the name of salvation. The thought of it sickened me. Every time I looked at Pastor Elijah, I saw him differently. The charisma, the smile, the way he spoke so confidently about God's power, all of it was a facade. Behind that mask was a man who had sold his soul, who was willing to use the very people who trusted him for his own gain. He didn't care about them. He didn't care about their salvation. He cared about the power he could get from the dark forces he was in league with. But you see, I also knew that speaking out wasn't simple. There were so many layers to this deception. People loved Apostle. He had built an empire, and they believed in him wholeheartedly. The thought of exposing him, of ripping away the truth, filled me with guilt. How could I destroy everything? How could I take away their faith in him? What if they didn't believe me? What if they thought I was lying, just trying to tear down a good man? What if my accusations only made things worse? My brother, the truth that I had known, became something I wanted to even run away from. I wrestled with this daily. There were times I would walk through the dark ways of the street, wondering if I was making the right choice. I couldn't sleep. The weight of what I had learned, the reality of what was about to happen, gnawed at me relentlessly. I kept picturing the faces of the people who had trusted him with their lives, their hopes, their faith. I had seen what Apostle was capable of, and now I understood the depth of his deception. My entire life had been a lie. I had been an accomplice to something so dark that I could hardly believe it was happening in the very place I had dedicated my life to serving. The church, the ministry, the crusade, it was all just a facade, a carefully constructed illusion. But no matter how much I walked or how hard I tried to reason with myself, there was one truth that kept ringing louder than all the others: I couldn't be a part of this anymore. I couldn't stay silent. I had seen too much. I knew too much. And now, I had to make a choice. I remember standing outside the church, staring at the city lights in the distance. The crusade would be starting in just a few hours. I could already hear the buzz of excitement building up around the event, the volunteers preparing, the banners going up, the sound systems being tested. Everything was set. And I was about to walk away. The thought made my heart race. Apostle had been everything to me. He had given me a position, a purpose, and the respect of the congregation. He had elevated me from being a simple young pastor to someone with power, influence, and a sense of importance. I had once believed in him wholeheartedly. I had once thought he was a man of God, someone chosen to lead us into a new era of faith. But now, I couldn't reconcile the man I thought I knew with the monster I had discovered. I started asking myself a lot of questions. What if I was wrong? What if I was misunderstanding everything? What if I misunderstood Apostle's intentions? But what choice did I have? I couldn't live with myself if I stayed silent. I couldn't be a part of something so evil, so cruel, any longer. The decision had been made. I couldn't go back. I had to leave. I turned my back on the church, the building that had once felt like home, and walked into the unknown. The path ahead was uncertain, and I had no idea what the future held. But one thing was certain: I could no longer be a part of the darkness. I had to stand for the light, no matter the consequences. I made my way to the nearest exit, and as I stepped out into the cold night, I felt a sense of liberation. I had walked away from everything I knew, everything I had built. But in that moment, I knew it was the only way I could find redemption. You see, the days after I left the church were a blur. I had no clear direction, no plan for how to expose the truth. The only thing I knew was that I couldn't stay in the shadows any longer. But the pastor who helped me understand my visions helped me a lot. He told me to keep quiet and walk away from the place entirely. And then seek the face of God. About his guidance as to what to do next. If he so wishes I speak openly, then I should be rest assured he will protect me. So, listening to his advice, I felt I am good and okay in the space I am now. It has been 4 years now, since I left the ministry, and I am here today. I have a foundation now that I am overseeing. I do not want to be a part of anything that I do not understand or know its source. We cater for children with disability in a small way that we can. We try and build a nice and comfortable place where people can come and stay. I believe this was my calling, and I want you all to help me in prayer that the good Lord that saw me through it all will also see us through this phase of the ministry. Thank you. I hope I have been a blessing to someone out there.
Don't forget to please subscribe, share and like our videos. Kindly hit the notification bell so you will be the first to get notification to our videos when we upload. You see, in this ministry life, not all who claim to be shepherds of light truly serve the light. Question the actions behind the words, and never surrender your discernment in the name of blind loyalty. Again, the pursuit of influence and greatness at all costs often leads to compromises with darkness. True power lies in humility and service, not manipulation and deceit. One thing is that we must seek truth, even in the shadows. The truth may be buried beneath layers of lies and fear, but it is always worth uncovering. Courage to expose evil, even when it threatens your safety, is the first step toward freedom. This is my message today. You should know and understand that your soul is priceless. No promise of miracles, power, or blessings is worth the cost of your soul. Guard it fiercely and reject anything that seeks to exploit or destroy it. Never allow yourself to be blinded by the allure of worldly success. Seek truth over popularity, humility over pride, and authenticity over the illusion of perfection. The light of the Holy Spirit is always available, and no matter how far you've gone or how deep you've fallen, redemption is possible. It may be hard, it may take time, but when you turn toward the truth, you'll find peace and freedom that surpasses any worldly power. And to those who follow leaders or pastors, remember that no one is above God. Keep your eyes fixed on Him, not on any person. All I will say again is that, stay grounded, stay prayerful, and stay vigilant. Never let anyone, no matter their title or position, control your path, your choices, or your spirit. Thank you for watching, and remember, life is too short to make choices you regret forever. We shall meet again in the next video.